Hello all, I am Dr. M. Laxmidevi, Associate Professor in the Department of CSCDS at Institute of Aeronautical Engineering. In this video lecture, we will learn about the difference between for loop, while loop and do while loop in C, as well as the other topic which we will learn is nested loops. So in the last class, we have discussed about loop control statements. So in module 2, we have the other topic which is there in module 2 is loop control statements. So loop control statements, so we have seen the different types of loops like for loop, while loop and do while loop. So first, coming to the need of loops. So why we use loops? So loops are used in a program or loops are used in C programming. So in order to avoid repetition of the code, or when you need to perform same set of operations or same set of statements are to be repeated for a certain number of times. So then we use loops in programming language. So these are used to repeat a block of code until the specified condition is met. So last video lecture we have discussed about for loop syntax, while loop syntax, do while loop syntax, as well as along with the flowchart for all the loops, as well as we have seen one program for each of the loops. Now, so types of loops. So we have seen that mainly the classification is based on entry control loops and exit control loops. So classification these are the two types. So this is the first one and this one is the second one. So this classification is based upon mainly where the test condition is checked. Suppose if the test condition is checked before entering the main body of the loop, so then that is called as entry control loop. So example for this is for loop and while loop. So both of them are entry control loops. Next, in exit control loop, here the test condition is evaluated at the end of the loop body. So first initially the statements which are there in the do while loop, so they are executed at least once, and then irrespective of whether the condition is true or false. So after that the condition is checked. So do while loop is an example of exit control loop. So next, let us see the difference between for loop, while loop and do while loop. So when the operation for all the loops is same, so that means they are used to repeat. So these loops are used for repeating certain set of statements in a program for fixed number of iterations or for any number of iterations. Then what is the use of or what is the need of three different loops? So we'll see the difference between all the different types of loops. So for loop, while loop, and next one is do while loop. So for loop, you can see here. So for any loops, so there are three important expressions. First one is initialization, next one is condition has to be checked, and the last one is updation. So we have seen the syntax for loop also. So syntax for loop is for initialization followed by semicolon. Then we have the condition, semicolon, and then updation. So initialization is, so it sets the value, or you can say to initialize a variable. So this initialization expression is used. Next, condition, to check how many times the loop has to be repeated. So there should be some condition specified. So that is done with the help of this condition. Next, after that, what is the step size of incrementation? So that is done with the help of this updation. So updation expression involves either increment or decrement operation. So increment or decrement is done with the help of increment or decrement operator we have seen. So this is the flowchart for loop. So first initialization is done, after that condition is checked. If the condition is true, the statements which are there in the for loop, so they will be executed. After that updation is done, then again the condition is checked. If it is true, then same will be repeated. So this loop will repeat. If it is false, the next statements after the for loop will be executed. Now here while loop also, first initially at the entry itself, after initialization condition is checked. So condition is checked before evaluating the statements which are there inside the body of while loop. So here also flowchart. With the help of this flowchart, we can understand the flow of control in while loop. So first initialization is done, then after that condition is checked, Then after that, the variable, if it is true, if this condition is true, the code inside the body of the loop is executed. If it is false, then the control will be transferred to out of the loop. Next is do while loop. So do while loop is also similar to while loop, but here the difference is in do while loop, test condition is evaluated at the end of the body, whereas so it will execute the statements inside the do while loop will be executed at least once irrespective of the test condition. So this is a flowchart of do while loop. So first the statements which are there in this, we have seen the syntax for this. So these are the statements which are written in the inside the do while loop. After that the condition is checked. So these are the statements. Then condition is evaluated. If it is evaluated to true, the statements, then again, if the condition is evaluated to true, then again the statements will be repeated. If it is false, then it will be the end of the do while loop. Next is, now let us see what are the major differences between for loop, while loop and do while loop. So from the syntax and from the flowchart, we have seen that for loop, while loop, these are entry control loops. So before entering the body of the loop itself, the condition is checked. So therefore, these are called as entry control loops. Whereas in do while loop, the condition is checked at the after the execution of the statements. So that's why it is called as, or you can say that the condition is checked after the statements are executed at least once. So therefore, it is called as exit controlled loop. So therefore control will not enter into the loop if the condition is false. So if the condition is false, the statements inside the loop will not be executed. So here control will not enter into the loop if the condition is false. So here also similar. Next, body of the loop will be executed at least once even if the condition is false here. So mainly we use loops, for loop and while loop, when the number of iterations are known. When we exactly know how many times the loop is going to repeat, so there we can use for loop. So for example, in order to print the numbers from 1 to 10, so we know that this loop has to be repeated for 10 times. So therefore we can specify so for such cases we can use for loop. So when we in advance know the number of times the loop is going to repeat, then or the number of iterations are known previously, then we can use for loop. So whereas while loop and do while loop are used, so when we don't know exactly how many times the loop is going to be repeated or how many iterations, it is used when number of iterations are not known exactly. So do while loop also similar. It is also used when number of iterations are not known exactly. So that is the main difference between for loop, while loop and do while loop. Now let us see one example. So with the help illustrating the use of while loop. So this is a program in order to check whether the given number is palindrome number or not. Now what is palindrome number? Palindrome number means suppose you have a 4-digit number. So this is the original number which is given. So if you reverse it, so if you reverse the digits, so first is if you start from here, so it will be 1, next is 2, 2 and 1. So this is the reversed number. So this is the original number and this is the reversed number. Both are equal. So when original number is equal to the number which is, even though it is reversed, so both are equal, then that number is called as palindrome number. So this is a palindrome number. Now let us see the program for this palindrome number. So here we have declared variables num, result, this stands for remainder and this is the original number. So in this printf statement, enter a number. So you'll get the output as enter a number when you execute this program. So in the scanf, the value of num is, so value of the number, that is original number for the number which you want to check. So that number is taken by the variable num. That number is stored in the variable num. Suppose we enter 1221. So num value is 1221. Now what we have done is, so we have taken one more variable original number belonging to integer type and assigned this num value to original num. So this is also equal to now 1221. Now here the loop starts. So in the loop, we have written the condition that num is not equal to 0. So num is not equal to 0 means, so this is a num in 1 to 2, 1. So this is not equal to 0. So this condition evaluates to true. So when this is true, it will enter the body of this while loop. So here it will evaluate this. So now REM will be calculated. REM is equal to num divided by modulus 10. So output of this is equal to, remainder for this is 1. And in the next step, num is num divided by 10. So 1221 divided by 10. So is equal to 122. So this is the, in the first iteration, we get the value of num and remainder and number as, the number is 1 to 122 and remainder is 1. Now result, so result is equal to, so initially result value we have assigned it to 0. So 0 into 10 plus remainder is 1. So this is equal to 1. So for the first iteration, we have the result value as 1. Now again, the condition will be checked. Now the new number value is equal to 122. Now the num is equal to, you can see there num value has been changed. Now it is equal to 122. So when num is equal to 122, so again it will check the condition here. So 122 is not equal to 0. So this condition evaluates to true. So this is true means it will enter. So all these statements will be executed. So statements, so this is iteration 2. So in the second iteration, remainder value calculated is, so new value of num is divided by 10. So mod 10 means 2. And num is equal to 122 divided by 10. So this is equal to 12. Now what about result value? Result is equal to, so previously result value is equal to 1. So in this iteration, now the result value is modified and its value is equal to 1. So 1 into 10 plus remainder. So 2. This is equal to 10 plus 2, 12. So these are the values which we obtained for second iteration. Now let us see what are the values for. Now the value of num is equal to 12. So again the condition is checked. So 12 is not equal to 0. This condition evaluates to true. So when this is true, again third iteration also will be performed. Again all these values will be calculated. So remainder is equal to num mod 10. So num mod 10 is equal to 2 and number is equal to number divided by 10. So answer is 1 and the result is equal to, previous iteration we got the result as 12. So 12 into 10 plus remainder. So this is equal to 122. Next, so num value we got it as 1. Next it will again check the condition. So 1 is not equal to 0. So this condition also evaluates to true. So these statements will be evaluated in the, so these statements will be evaluated. So remainder is equal to, what is the num value now? 1 mod 10. So 1 mod 10, that means this is nothing but 1 divided by 10. So 10 zeros are 0. So this is 1. Now 1 is the remainder here and number is equal to 1 divided by 10. So 1 divided by 10 is 0. And result value, result is equal to, previous iteration we got the result as 122. 122 into 10 plus remainder. So remainder is equal to 1. So that is what we have written here. So answer is equal to 1221. So this is the value of result. Now in the next iteration, again this condition will be checked. Now the num value is equal to 0. 0 is not equal to 0. That condition becomes false. 0 not equal to 0 means this is evaluated to false. So now these statements will not be executed. So in this way, now how you can check whether the given number is palindrome or not. So we have taken one more variable, original number. We have assigned to this variable 1221 the input which we have given, or the input which the user has given. So this number is to be compared with the result value. So what is the value of result here? So same number you got here. So this number is the result. So after reversing the number, you got this as So what we are doing here is we are separating each in this program. What we are doing here is we are separating each of the digit. So 1 and then calculating the reverse. So 1221. Reverse of this is 1221 only. So original number is 1221. Then after reversing, we got 1221. So now we have to write if condition. So if the original number is equal to the result, then you have to print the given number is. So output of this is a palindrome number. So this will be the output. Now if it is a 4-digit number, if you give another input, so suppose 1, 2, 3. So if this is the num value which you have given, then output of this is 1, 2, 3 is not palindrome. Why? Because if you reverse this, so 3, 2, 1 is the reverse. So original number is not equal to the result. So therefore this is not a palindrome number. So if you want, you can check, you can verify the code for this. Then, so in this way you can check whether the given number is palindrome or not with the help of this while loop. So if we have 3 digits, so if there are 4 digits, so 4 iterations are required. If you have 3 digits, 3 iterations are required for this program to check whether the given number is palindrome or not. So that's why we exactly don't know how many times the loop is going to repeat. So that's why we have used while loop here. So if we know in advance how many iterations the loop is going to repeat, then we can use for loop. Next is nested loops. So in this video lecture, we will also be covering the topic nested loops. So nested loops is nothing but loop inside another loop. So that is nested loop. So the depth of nested loop depends upon the complexity of a problem. So we can have any number of nested loops as required. So depending upon the complexity of the problem, we can have number of loops inside another loop. So we can have, so these are the different types of loops which are possible. Different types of nested loops we can have: nested while loop, nested for loop, and nested do while loop. So what is nested while loop here? So a while loop inside another while loop. So while loop inside another while loop is called as nested while loop. Here we need to mention the condition. Condition 1, this one is condition 2. So nested for loop is for loop inside. So here we need to write the expressions: initialization, then condition, and then updation. So for loop, so this is the outer for loop and this one is the inner for loop. So in this way, so this is called as nested for loop and this one is called as nested while loop. Then last one, nested do while loop. So do while loop, then condition is to be evaluated. Inside this again one more do while loop you will have, then condition. So do while loop, so this is the inner do while loop and this one is the outer do while loop. Similarly here also this one is the outer loop and this one is the inner loop. This is the outer one and this one is the inner loop. So we can have mixed type of nested loops also, that is a for loop inside a while loop or while loop inside a do while loop and so on. Next is, so now let us see the syntax. We will see the syntax for each one and along with flowchart and one program. So first one, nested while loop. A while loop inside another while loop is called as nested while loop. So this is the syntax for nested while loop. So while condition 1, this one is the outer while loop. So inside this outer while loop, we write the statements which are to be executed when this condition is true. Then if this condition is true, only then it will enter into this, the control is transferred here. Then after that this condition will be evaluated. This one is the inner while loop. So we know that while loop is entry control loop. So at the starting itself it will check the condition, only then after that the statements which are there inside the loop will be executed. So these are the statements inside inner while loop statements. So after that, so this is the end of inner while loop. So here we have the statements. So these are the statements of outer while loop. So these are outer while loop statements. Now let us see the flowchart for nested while loop. So this is the flowchart. So first, when the control is transferred, first the condition 1 is checked. So when the condition 1 evaluates to true, then after that it will enter the inner while loop. So this is outer while loop condition and this one is inner while loop condition. Inner while loop condition will be checked. If it is true, the statements inside inner while loop. So these are inner while loop statements. So these statements will be executed. Then again condition will be checked. If the condition is false, the control will come. Control is transferred to end of the while loop. So this is end of inner while loop. After that, if there are any statements inside the outer while loop, so those statements will be evaluated. Then condition will be checked. If the condition is true, then again it will enter the inner while loop and then again the process will be repeated. If the condition is false, so that will be end of the outer while loop. And the next statements which are there in the program, those statements will be evaluated. Now let us see one program. So this is a simple program making use of nested while loop. So this should be the output of this program. So in the first line 1. So this is the output part. This is the output which we need to obtain. 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 and 5. Now let us see how we can get the output for this. So we have initialized or declared two variables here. So initialization I is equal to 1 and in the outer while loop, so this one is the outer while loop. So the condition checked here is, so for I is equal to 1, the condition this is checked. 1 is less than or equal to 5. So this is true. So this is true means it will enter the inner while loop. So now inner while loop will be executed. This condition will be checked. J is less than or equal to I. So for that first we need to initialize. So that is done here. J is equal to 1. Now 1 is less than or equal to, what is I value now? I is equal to 1 because I is initialized to 1. So 1 is less than or equal to 1. This is also true. So this is inner while loop and this one is outer while loop condition. So this is true means, so these statements will be executed. So inside the while loop we have written printf j value. So only 1 will be printed. J value is equal to 1. So output of this will be 1 now. So 1 will be printed. So this will be the output. Next after that j will be incremented by 1. So now j is equal to 2 now. J is equal to 2. Again it will check the condition. 2 is less than or equal to 1. I is equal to 1 only. 2 is less than or equal to 1 means that is false. So this is false means now program inner while loop. So control is transferred out of the inner while loop and the statements which are there in outer while loop, they will be executed. So after output, after 1 is displayed on the screen, so cursor will move to the next line. So whatever output is there, so in the new line it will be printed. So for that purpose, we have introduced this new line escape sequence. Next, after that, I value is incremented by 1. So we know that if we don't include this updation expression in the while loop, so it will become infinite loop. So we need to include updation expression. Now I value is incremented by 1. Now I is equal to 2 now. So I is equal to 2. Now again it will check the outer while loop condition. 2 is less than or equal to 5. So this is evaluated to true. Now it will again check the inner loop condition. So before checking inner loop condition, again j value is initialized to 1 now. Now inner loop condition 1. So this is the condition which is checked. I1 is less than or equal to 2. So this is true. So it is true means now the output which is printed here, it is true means it will enter here. So 1 will be printed. Again 1 will be printed on the next line. Next after that j value is incremented by 1. So now j is equal to 2. So 2 is less than or equal to 2 because I is equal to 2 now. So this is also true. So therefore again this statement, printf statement will be executed once more. So 2 will be printed. So output of this will be 1, 2. So previously we got the output as 1. Next, now j value is incremented by 1. So j is equal to 3 now. So is 3 less than or equal to 2? So that becomes false. 3 is less than or equal to 2. So that becomes false. So no output you will get. So these statements will not be executed. So control will be transferred here. Again, new line. So printf statement will be, now the cursor will be placed in the new line. Now I is equal to 3. So I is equal to 3. So here again outer loop condition will be checked. So 3 is less than or equal to 5. So this is true. So therefore inner loop while condition it will check. So again j is initialized to 1 here. So 1 is less than or equal to 3. So this is true. So it is true means 1 will be printed. Next j incremented by 1. 2 is less than or equal to 3. This is also true. So 2 will be printed. So output of this will be, so 2 will be printed. Next 3 is also less than or equal to 3. This is also true. So 3 will be printed. So here finally you can, on the screen the output displayed is 1, 2 and 3. So this is the output of this iteration. So in iteration 1, in the first iteration 1 you got as the output. In the iteration 2, in the second iteration, so 1, 2 is the output. This is the output of the third iteration. Next again I value is incremented by 4. So again it will go for outer loop. So 4 is less than or equal to 5. So this inner loop will repeat 4 times because I is equal to 4 here. So j is equal to 1. So here this condition will be checked 4 times. So it will become true 4 times. 1 less than or equal to 4. 2 is less than or equal to 4. 3 is also less than or equal to 4. 4 is also less than or equal to 4. So output of this iteration will be 1, 2, 3 and 4. So in this way, next again I value is incremented by 1. I is equal to 5. So outer condition checked is 5 is less than or equal to 5. This is true. So it is true means now control is transferred to the inner loop. So inner loop will execute 5 times now. The output of this iteration is 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So in this way, finally the output which you are going to get is, so 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So in this way we can understand the operation of nested while loop. Next is nested for loop. So syntax for nested for loop is, for initialization condition 1. So why we have used condition 1 means in order to differentiate the condition between, so outer loop and inner loop. So this is the outer loop condition and this one is the inner loop condition. This is update expression in the outer for loop and this one is the update expression in the inner for loop. So after outer for loop statements are there, then we place the inner for loop inside the outer for loop. So with the statements. Next to flowchart. So this is how the control is transferred in case of when we use nested for loop. So this is the outer for loop and this one is the inner for loop. So first step which is done here is, so here different steps which are indicated are, so these are the numbers. So these numbers indicate the order of operation of, the order of execution of this for loop. So first step which is executed is initialization. After that the condition in the outer for loop is checked. If it is true, then it goes to the inner for loop. So their initialization takes place. After that, the condition in the inside inner for loop is evaluated. If it is true, then the statements inside the for loop are executed. Then after that, the next step is increment or decrement. This loop will go on repeating if this condition, until this condition becomes true. Once this condition becomes false, control is transferred immediately out of the inner for loop and then the update or increment, this operation is performed. After that, the condition is evaluated in the outer for loop. If this condition is true, again this inner for loop also will be repeated. If this condition is false, then the control is transferred to out of the for loop. Now let us see one example for this. So before going to see the example, let us see the flowchart for this. So here you can see the flowchart. So first one is initialization. So next to is condition 1 is checked. So that is in the outer for loop. So condition 1 is for outer for loop is checked. If it is true, then the condition 2 is checked. So this is the inner for loop. If it is true, condition 2 is checked. If it is true, if the condition 2 is also true, then the statements inside the inner for loop are executed and then increment decrement operation. Then this is evaluated till the condition becomes false. Once the condition becomes false, so that will be the end of inner for loop. So control is transferred to, again this control is transferred to increment and decrement which is there in the outer for loop. Condition is checked. If it is true, again inner loop will be evaluated. If it is false, then the control is transferred to out of the for loop. Now let us see one example for this. So here this is a program where we have to get the output as this. So this is the output which we need to print. So this is similar to the previous program itself. In the previous program, what we have done is, instead of these asterisk symbols, we have printed 1, 2, 3. So the same pattern you can observe there also. So pattern for both the outputs is same, but there we have printed the numbers. Here we are printing the symbols. Asterisk symbol we need to print. So let us try to get the output with the help of this program. So let us see what is the working of this nested for loop. So first the control is transferred here. So as you know, program is executed sequentially. If there is any loop, so inside the loop, the statements will be executed number of times. So first row value is initialized. Row variable is initialized to 5. So row value is equal to 5. And then we have not initialized any values for this I and j. So there are two variables I and j. So this is the outer for loop. This is the outer for loop and this one is the inner for loop. So here we have written I is equal to 1. So I is equal to 1. So this is a variable which is initialized in the outer for loop. So I is equal to 1. So for that the condition checked here is, if the control is transferred here, so 1 less than or equal to 5. So row value is equal to 5. It will check this. This condition is true. So therefore it will enter the inner for loop. So inner for loop j is equal to 1. This is the outer for loop. So inner for loop, the condition to be checked here is, the condition which is checked here is j less than or equal to I. I is equal to 1 here. So this evaluates to true. So when this is true, then this line will be executed. This printf statement is executed. One star will be printed here. So star will be printed. So after that, again j value will be incremented by 1. So j is equal to 2 now. So it will check the condition 2 is less than or equal to 1. So that becomes false. So when it is false, control is transferred to out of the inner for loop. Now the cursor is moved to the, after printing one asterisk symbol, so control, the cursor will move to the next line. So because of this printf statement which is there in the outer for loop. Next it will check, it will increment the value of I now. Now the control is transferred here. I value will be incremented by 1. I is equal to 2 now. So again the condition is checked. Before entering into the body of this outer for loop, condition here is checked. So 2 is less than or equal to 5. So this is true. Then again j value is initialized to 1. So inner for loop condition will be checked. So j 1 is less than or equal to 2. So this is true. So one asterisk will be printed. Then after that again j value is incremented by 1. Now 2 is less than or equal to 2 is tested. It also becomes true. So one more asterisk symbol will be printed. So this is iteration 1. This is iteration 2. So after that when j value is incremented by 1, so 3 less than or equal to, so I value is equal to 2. So 3 less than or equal to 2 means that evaluates to false. So therefore the control is transferred here. Now the cursor will move to the next line. So whatever after that I value is incremented by 1. So I is equal to 3 now. Again the condition is checked in the outer for loop. So 3 less than or equal to 5. So this becomes true. So inner for loop, the condition j value is initialized to 1. Each time it enters, the control is transferred to the inner for loop. J is initialized to 1. So therefore 1 less than or equal to 3. So this becomes true. So 2 less than or equal to 3. This is also true. And 3 less than or equal to 3. This is also true. So output of this will be, so 3 stars will be printed. So 3 times inner for loop is executing. So 3 stars will be printed, 3 asterisk symbol. This is iteration 3. Next again, when ij value is equal to 4, so 4 less than or equal to 3, so that becomes false. Condition evaluates to false in the inner for loop. So therefore control is transferred to the statement in the outer for loop. So here in the outer for loop, escape sequence is given in the printf. New line escape sequence is given. So control is cursor will move to the next line. So from here the printf statement will be, so all the asterisk symbol will be printed according to the program. Now the output of this will be, so this loop will repeat for 5 times. I is equal to 4 because I less than or equal to 5 here. So outer loop will execute 5 times, whereas for each iteration of, so for iteration 1, so inner loop will execute 1 time. For iteration 2, inner loop will execute 2 times. For the third iteration, inner loop will execute 3 times. Fourth iteration, inner loop will execute 4 times. And for the fifth iteration, inner loop will execute 5 times. So therefore, at the last, you can see that there are 5 asterisk symbol at the last in the fifth row. So in this way, we'll get the output. This is the output obtained for nested for loop. Next one is nested do while loop. So nested do while loop is do while loop inside. It is a do while loop inside another do while loop. So you can see the syntax as this one. Here is the condition. This is the outer one. This is the outer do while loop, and this one is the inner do while loop. It is a do while loop is nothing but a nested do while loop is a do while loop inside another do while loop is called as nested do while loop. So we can have n number of do while loops. Inside this we can have another do while loop also. That depends upon the complexity of the program which is to be used. That depends upon the complexity of the program. So see the syntax here. So this is the syntax for nested do while loop. First do, after that the statements which are to be executed, and then again this is the inner do while loop, and this one is the outer do while loop. So you can see here, since do while loop is an exit controlled loop, so condition is checked after the execution of the statements which are there inside the body of the loop. So after that condition is checked here. If this condition is true, control is transferred to the inner do while loop and these statements will be executed. If this condition becomes false, then the condition in the outer do while loop is checked. If this condition is true, then the do while loop statements, again the statements in the outer do while loop and statements inside the inner do while loop are executed. Now let us see the flowchart for this. So these are the statements. First, so here we can have statements inside. These are the inner do while loop statements. So we can have we are having statements in the outer do while loop also. Now see here. So this is a flowchart of nested do while loop. We have one loop, inner do while loop and outer do while loop. So if first the statements which are there in outer do while loop and statements which are there in inner do while loop, these are executed. After that, the condition in the inner do while loop is checked. If it is true, then the control is, again the inner do while loop statements will be executed. Then after that, if the condition is false here, if the condition becomes false, so that is the end of inner do while loop. Then after that, the condition in the outer do while loop is checked. If this condition is true, then the statements in the outer do while loop are executed as well as the statements inside the inner do while loop are also executed. So if the condition is false in the outer do while loop, then the control is transferred to the next statements which are there outside the nested do while loop. So let us see one program for this. So we can have the same program So this is a program to print this pattern. So this should be the output of this program. Now let us see how we will get the output. So this is a program. So output of this program is this one. So this is a program to print star pattern. So where you have one column, where you have 5 rows. So 5 rows and corresponding to suppose first column. So suppose for row 1. So row 1, number of columns to be printed are 1. So row 2. So in the columns, 2 asterisk symbols must be printed. So here 1, here 2. So if it is row 3, so 3 columns will be there. So 3 asterisk symbol will be printed. So in row 4, again 4 asterisk symbols are to be printed. And in row 5, 5 asterisk symbols are to be printed. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So in this way, we can write the program for this by using nested do while loop. So first the variable which is initialized is I is equal to 1. So I is equal to 1 will be, so I value will be equal to 1 now. Next j is also equal to 1. Next printf statement will be executed. Why? Because we are not checking any condition here. So printf statement will be executed. Output of this will be, we'll get the output as this. So star will be printed or asterisk symbol will be printed. Now next j value is incremented by 1. So j is equal to, previously j is equal to 1. Now j incremented by 1 means j is equal to 2 now. Now the condition is checked here. So when the condition is checked, so 2 is less than or equal to 1. Because I is equal to 1, 2 less than or equal to 1. So this is false. So this is false means control is transferred to outer do while loop. So in the outer do while loop, we have the statement. We have this incrementation. I is I plus plus. So I is equal to I plus plus means I is equal to I plus 1. So here for the initial iteration, I is equal to 1. Now I value is equal to 2 now. I value is equal to 2. Now control is transferred here. So cursor will move to the next line. Then after that this condition is checked. So condition to be checked here is in the outer do while loop, condition checked is 2 less than or equal to 5. So this is true. So therefore again it will repeat the statements. Again j will be equal to 1. So j is equal to 1. Again 1 star will be printed. Then now j is equal to j plus plus, j is equal to 2. Now this condition will be checked. So 2 less than or equal to 1. So this is true. Again it will, when 2 is less than or equal to 1. So again this loop will be repeating. So again 1 more star will be printing. So output of this will be 2 stars are printed. Then after that j value is incremented by 1. So j is equal to 3. So when j is equal to 3, 3 less than. So this is inner do while loop condition. 3 less than or equal to, sorry, 2 is less than or equal to 2 it should be. Why? Because I is equal to 2 here. So 3 is less than or equal to 2. So this evaluates to false. So this evaluates to false means now next statement after this do while loop is executed. So I plus plus, I is equal to I plus 1 now. I is equal to 3 here. So in the outer I is equal to 3, cursor will move to the next line. After that the condition checked in the outer do while loop is 3 less than or equal to 5. So this is true. Again it will execute the statements inside the outer do while loop as well as inner do while loop. So again j value is initialized to 1. So j is equal to 1. So 1 star will be printed. So next j is equal to 2. It will check the condition 2 less than or equal to 3. So after that 2 less than or equal to 3. So this condition is true. Again 1 more star will be printed. So in this way you will get the output for this one. So this is, so as you can see here, so this loop will repeat for 5 iterations. So from I is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So finally when you get I is less than or equal to 5, so this loop will be repeating, 5 stars will be printed or 5 asterisk symbol will be printed. Then when it will check the condition, when I value is incremented by 1, I becomes 6. So 6 less than or equal to 5. So this becomes false. So program will come to the end of the outer do while loop. So our program execution will be stopped. So in this way, this is the output of this program. So in this way, we have seen the difference between for loop, while loop and do while loop, as well as we have seen. So in this video lecture, we have discussed about the syntax, the syntax flowchart, and with the help of one program also, we have seen the working of different nested loops. So in nested loops, we can have one loop inside another loop. So that can be combined. We can have nested while loop, we can have nested for loop, as well as we can have nested do while loop also, or we can have mixed loop also, one loop inside another loop. So do while loop inside another for loop, or for loop inside another while loop, etc. and so on. So this is for all. So with this, I would like to conclude in this today's video lecture. So in the coming video lecture, we will be discussing some more topics about C programming. So until then, thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.